Chop, chop. All right, so this particular model only shows thin, hairy skin. So here we say, what does a hair emerge from? A hair follicle. This entire gray object is one hair follicle. You see the hair shaft being the portion of the hair that's visible above the epidermal surface. So shaft, 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 shaft. Hair root is what's below the surface, we see here. This is a longitudinally sectioned follicle. We see the hair root within the follicle itself, all this dark brown. In the center of the follicle is hair root. Still hair root, then it leaves the surface, it's now hair shaft. Okay, now the hair follicle has a rounded bottom called a hair bulb. So this is the hair bulb. This is the hair bulb. Okay, I can take a hint. And this section follicle shows the hair bulb has an indentation within it. That's the hair papilla. So you can see capillaries going into the hair papilla. So the capillaries are providing the oxygen to, moving the CO2 from the hair follicle. It's a living organ. The hair root and hair shaft, that's dead. But the hair follicle itself is a living organ. And it's in two tissue layers. So to be an organ requires at least two distinct tissues. The two tissue layers are the outer external root sheath and the inner pink internal root sheath. So it's the internal root sheath that forms around the hair root that actually gives rise to the hair root. Okay, so external root sheath, internal root sheath, the follicle, bulb, papilla, hair root, hair root, hair root, and then suddenly hair shaft. Once it emerges into the daylight, it's the hair shaft. Wrapped around the follicle, always, 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 every follicle has one of these wrapped around it, is a sebaceous gland. The sectional view, you can see this chopped sebaceous gland. This is the source of sebum. Sebum is an oily secretion. And the sebum oozes its way up along the hair root and shaft. And so somebody with oily hair, or oily skin, has overactive sebaceous glands. Somebody with dry hair or dry skin has underactive sebaceous glands, and so on. Let's see. What else do we have? Oh, also attached to every follicle is an erector pili muscle right there. There's one attached to this follicle here. Notice how the follicles are angled? That's the norm. They are angled. They are oblique. And when a group of erector pili muscles contract, so they would pull in the follicle this way, straightening them up so that the hair shafts stick straight up too. When your hair stands on end, that's a group of erector pili muscles contracting, pulling the follicles upright so the hair shafts stick upright. Also, what that does, it ripples the surface. Goosebumps. So the simultaneous contraction of a group of these erector pili muscles will cause ripples of the surface, will cause goosebumps. Okay, that is a merocrine or eccrine sweat gland. How do you tell that that's this particular type of sweat gland? It has a duct that goes all the way to the surface, right there. So that's a pore right there, pore in the skin right there. Let's see, another key thing about this type of sweat gland, it is not associated with hair, not associated with follicles. It's its own independent organ.
So there are just two glands in this skin model?
Yes. This particular model only shows the one sweat gland, the merocrine or eccrine.
This is a sebaceous gland.
Sebaceous gland, merocrine or eccrine sweat gland.
Yeah.
Right here. Okay. Let's see. What else do we have? Let's go over the sensory receptors. That is a Meissner's corpuscle. That is a Pacinian corpuscle. They're both pressure sensitive. They're both touch sensitive. Which one, the Meissner's or the Pacinian, do you think will respond to very, very light touch? Yeah, because it's a lot closer to the surface, absolutely. So you feel something tickling you, you are activating a bunch of Meissner's corpuscles. If somebody pinching you, you're activating both the Meissner's corpuscles and these deeper Pacinian corpuscles. Somebody punches you, a bunch of these are responding. These are too, but to get these to respond means that you are experiencing greater pressure or force, and your nervous system will let you know that too, that you've just been pinched or punched versus just tickled. Let's see, the epidermis versus the dermis versus the hypodermis. That's the epidermis of thin, hairy skin. How many layers?
5.
Of thin, hairy skin. Four. All right, here they are. This is the stratum corneum. That's the apical portion of the epidermis. Stratum corneum. This is the stratum granulosum up here. Very, very grainy, stains the granules inside the cell stain very dark. Then we come to the stratum spinosum layer. So it's corneum, granulosum, spinosum. Doesn't really show it. Along the base here should be one more layer of cells, stratum basale, right here. So one more layer of boxy cells along the base, stratum basale, but not really clear on this mount. So
The other one?
corneum, granulosum, spinosum, basale. Both of these show the basale more distinctly. Okay, what are these little projections sticking up? These little pink projections are dermal papillae. One papilla, two or more papillae. A papilla, by the way, is Latin for nipple, so the dermal nipples sticking up here. So the dermal papillae are characteristic of the papillary layer of the dermis. So all of the pink is dermis. This is the papillary layer of the dermis, where the papillae are. The reticular layer of the dermis, it should look darker than that because it's very, very rich in what are called reticular fibers, skinny collagen fibers. The reticular fibers, we've got broad collagen fibers, you've got really, really skinny elastic fibers, and then the third category, reticular fibers, were thought to consist of a different protein. No, they're just skinny collagen fibers. So this should appear darker because it's rich in those skinny reticular fibers that absorb more stain, but they look like the same color. So how you should really tell these apart is when you stain the dermis, the bottom 2/3 or 3/4 should be darker than the top third or quarter, okay, because of the presence of many reticular fibers. Okay, let's see, down here is the hypodermis. A whole lot of adipose tissue makes this up. Technically not considered part of the skin. But the epidermis is keratinized, stratified squamous epithelium. The dermis is connective tissue, all of the dermis is connective tissue, and the hypodermis is specifically adipose connective tissue. Any questions?
So this does not have any blood vessels in it?
No, epithelial tissue lacks blood vessels. So the epidermis, being a type of epithelial tissue, has no blood vessels. That's what I was saying. If you scratch just the epidermis, you won't draw any blood. In order to cause bleeding, you have to scratch all the way down into the dermis. See these dermal papillae occupied with capillaries in here and Meissner's corpuscles? Okay, moving on. Another model showing both types of skin. From here to here, we have thin, hairy skin. Notice the hair shafts. And from here to the right, we have thick, hairless skin. Much thicker stratum corneum. Much more stratified stratum corneum layer of thick, hairless epidermis. No follicles, therefore no hair shafts here. Also, no erector pili muscle, no sebaceous glands. Remember, sebaceous glands and erector pili muscle only associated with follicles. So the thick, hairless skin of the palms and soles would not have any hair, would not have any erector pili, so you wouldn't get goosebumps there, and would not have any sebaceous glands, so they wouldn't be greasy. They wouldn't get oily. But could they get sweaty?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. They do have eccrine sweat glands, merocrine sweat glands in all skin over the entire body surface. This is a really, really common gland over the entire body. Okay, again, what differentiates between an eccrine sweat gland and an apocrine? The eccrine sweat gland is independent of any hair, so it's hairy and hairless, and its duct goes all the way to the epidermal surface, And the sweat it secretes is very watery. It's salty, but it's mainly water. So it's a dilute salt water coming out at the surface here. This thing, when I first started teaching this lesson, is this supposed to be an apocrine gland? Doesn't make sense, because it's big enough, but the duct goes all the way to the surface. And I think like 2-3 years into teaching, and I discovered a key to this stupid model that said, this is a magnified eccrine sweat gland, just to mess with your heads. So you see, here's how you tell it's an eccrine or merocrine gland. Its duct goes all the way to the epidermal surface. Okay, so they just blew it up, in other words. Follicle, erector pili muscle, sebaceous gland, hair root, hair shaft. Let's see, what else? Here we have Meissner's corpuscles in dermal papillae. Here we have a Pacinian corpuscle down in the hypodermis. Let's see what else. All the pink is dermis, all the yellow hypodermis, and the epidermis. Stratum corneum, then you see the darker stratum granulosum, then the lighter stratum basale, and then the stratum basale along the bottom. Dark line of cells along the bottom, stratum basale. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 layers to the epidermis of thin, hairy skin. Hop over to here, either the palm of the hand or the sole of the foot. We have very thick stratum corneum. We've got a stratum lucidum layer, which this skin does not have. Stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and stratum basale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 epidermal layers here. Corneum, lucidum, granulosum, spinosum, basale. With the lucidum being the additional layer. Okay, let's see. That's pretty much everything. Oh yeah, hair bulb, hair papilla. We can just barely see the external root sheath there compared to the really, really thin pink internal root sheath surrounding the hair root, the 2 tissue layers of the follicle. Any questions about this model? Okay, last but not least, bring this one down. Again, this time from right to left, we have thin, hairy skin, and from here to the left, we have thick, hairless skin. So very, very thick stratum corneum, A, stratum lucidum, B, stratum granulosum, C, stratum spinosum, D, stratum basale, E. A, B, C, D, E. What's missing here? B is missing. No stratum lucidum there. So we have corneum, granulosum, spinosum, and basale, forming the epidermis of thin, hairy skin. Okay, dermal papillae, Meissner's corpuscle here and here. There's lots of Pacinian corpuscles. Here we have the adipose tissue of the hypodermis. All the pink is dermis. And they make no attempt to separate that into papillary and reticular layers. Eccrine or merocrine sweat gland with a duct going all the way to the epidermal surface. Let's see, same thing here, duct going all the way to the surface. That is an apocrine sweat gland. It's a larger gland, and it's got a very short duct, and it's always associated with a hair. Notice that the eccrine is not associated with hair, is not associated with hair. But the apocrine sweat gland has a short duct that empties along a hair root to the surface. So that sweat comes out along the surface here. And this is more localized. This you find everywhere. This one you only find in the axillary regions or armpits and in the groin. So you have both types in the axillary region and groin, but only this type in those 2 regions. Okay? And the type of sweat that it secretes is thicker, more viscous than the sweat coming from here. This is a very watery, this produces a very watery sweat. This produces a more viscous sweat. There's a lot of cell sloughing off, so the gland sheds lots of cells into that sweat. And in the armpits and groin, bacteria love to feed on those dead cells. So you get bacterial reproduction going on, and those bacteria produce waste products. And if you don't bathe those areas frequently, you get BO from the buildup of those bacterial waste products. Okay? Questions? What's this here? Hairball. What's this little indentation? Hair papilla. What's that thing?
Rectopili muscle.
Rectopili muscle. This is a cutaway view of a what?
Sebaceous
There
gland.
you go. Done.
You didn't mention the hair follicle.
Well, I didn't do the layers here because they get super detailed on the layers of this follicle, so that's why I'm ignoring that follicle.